Hi and welcome to Story Time with me, Miss Preethi, from the team of I Spy Hope. Today's story is called How Full Is Your Bucket for Kids, and it's a story written by Tom Rath and Mary Reckmeyer, illustrated by Maury J. Manning. Now, the story is a very concrete way of showing how you can do kind acts for others and how doing kind acts for others actually fulfills us. Right? Now, I don't want to confuse you too much. Let's get right to the story so you know exactly what I'm talking about. How Full Is Your Bucket for Kids? Written by Tom Rath and Mary Reckmeyer. Felix was putting one of the last blocks on his tower when his little sister came in. "I want to build with you," she said. But Felix scowled. "Go away! You're too little." "I'm big," she said. "Stay back! You'll knock it over." "I can be very careful." "Go away! Play with your baby toys, Anna." Felix, and thwack! She runs into Felix's blocks. "Grandpa!" Grandpa shook his head. "Felix, you just dipped from your sister's bucket. Like everyone else, Anna has an invisible bucket. When it's empty, she feels bad. But when it's full, she feels great. Didn't you ever notice your own bucket?" Bucket? Invisible bucket? Sometimes Felix just didn't understand what his grandfather was always joking about. But the next morning, when Felix woke up, there was a small grey bucket above his head. Ooh, do you see that bucket which is filled half with water above his head? When Felix came down to have breakfast, his mom was in a hurry. "I got a meeting this morning and it's almost time to go. Anna, sit still." And his mother's in a rush, trying to comb Anna's hair when everyone is having breakfast. Felix reaches up for his cereal and Felix slipped and choco wheats scattered across the floor. "Felix!" yelled his mom. "You should have just used a stool to reach for that." Felix could feel his bucket tip and big invisible drops spilling out. Drip, drip. "Ha ha!" Anna laughed as she scrunched the cereal with her shoes. Drip. "Get the broom and clean that up before you miss the bus," scolded Mom. With the school bus honking, Felix quickly swept up the choco wheats and grabbed the last blueberry muffin. But before he could even take one bite, Buster jumped up and grabbed the muffin from his hand. Drip. Some more water is dripping out of Felix's invisible bucket. "Hey, look at Felix's new backpack. My baby brother has one just like it." When everyone's making fun of him, again Felix could feel drip, drip, more water draining from his bucket. As he walks in school, everyone goes, "Felix, Felix this, Felix that." And again, drip. And there's a boy who bumps into him and says, "Hey, watch out, shrimp!" Again, drip. It was still morning and Felix's bucket felt almost empty. And when the bucket feels empty, can you look at how Felix's face looks? As he watched his classmates walk into the room, he secretly hoped that they would all trip and fall. That's what it feels like when you have an empty bucket. Felix slumped into his seat and waited for something else bad to happen. Mrs. Bumblenickel walked slowly up to his desk and handed him his paper. But he could hardly bear to look. "Felix, you wrote a wonderful story. Would you please share it with the class?" Felix grinned and felt a big drop land into his bucket. Drop! Wow! Felix's bucket is filling up. The Gigantosaurus Who Wanted a Pet, by me, Felix. The class grew quiet. They laughed at all the right places and oohed at all the scary parts. When Felix finally read "The End," everyone clapped. Even Emily, who sat next to him and didn't usually like dinosaurs. Felix felt a whole shower of drops land in his bucket. Drops landing into his bucket. Maybe the day wasn't so bad after all. At lunchtime, Felix saw that his mother had left him a note with his lunch which says, "Love you." A drop into his bucket. Team captain today are Veronica and Felix. When Felix got chosen as captain, what do you think happens? Drop. Another drop into the bucket. At art class, his teacher says, "Nice cow." It's a dog. Well, nice colors there, Felix. Again, drop into the bucket. His classmate says, "Cool laser and backpack, Felix." And when someone says something nice, again, a drop into his bucket. By afternoon, Felix's bucket was nearly full. Do you see what's happening here? At recess, when he looked around, Felix suddenly realized that his grandpa was right. Everyone else had a bucket too. So remember that everyone you see has an invisible bucket, and either it can drip where the water is flowing out, or you can drop where the water falls into the bucket. Now let's see something else that happens, something beautiful. Watch. When Felix helps his teacher pick up the papers from the floor, he says, "Let me help you." And do you notice that there's a drop falling into both their buckets? "Here's your baseball. Catch." Felix is helping his friends when they're playing baseball, and they are like, "Thanks, dude." And water falls into Felix's bucket and the other bucket. Felix sees a boy sitting on a bench, and do you see the boy's bucket? It's almost empty. When Felix says, "Hi, I'm Felix. Is it your first day?" And the boy says, "Yes, I'm Amir." And there's a drop that falls into both Felix's bucket and Amir's bucket. I wonder what's happening with the bucket. Let's see. The strange thing was, that for every drop he helped put in someone else's bucket, he felt another drop in his own bucket. When Felix burst into the door after school, he shouted, "You were right, Grandpa! I do have a bucket and I understand how it works." Then he saw Anna's stone doll. "Bad dog," he almost scolded. But then he thought, dogs might have invisible buckets too. "Your doll will be okay, Anna," said Felix. "Mom will fix her. Until then, do you want to help me build the tallest building in the world with my blocks?" And so they did. As Felix played with his sister, her bucket is almost full, and so is his. That's the story of how full is your bucket. It's a beautiful story that illustrates that being kind to others not only helps them, but it helps us feel good as well. I want you to think of your invisible buckets and fill your classmates' buckets and your friends and your siblings and your parents, everyone's bucket. Will you fill it? Will you do something small today to fill someone else's bucket? That was today's story. Remember, have fun learning and have a wonderful day ahead. Thank you.